Of things, some are in our power and others are not. That is the opening line of Epictetus's Enchiridion, which literally translates as at the ready or handbook. It is the distillation of his clear and actionable thinking as to what living Stoicism in your life is. Epictetus is a very interesting guy to consider. His biography is Hollywood level, considering his importance reverberated throughout thousands of years since his life. Epictetus was born a slave in the provinces. I believe it was in what is modern day Spain. I'd have to double check that though, but outside of Rome for sure. Um, he had a disabled leg, so he didn't walk as what we would say normally, right? He was savagely beaten as a slave and never walked easily thereafter. Um, he did take on a teacher's mantle. Ultimately, he became a freeman and was able to teach, but he was also banished for that. So he had a very hard life, and even his name, Epictetus, translates to property or having been bought. Um, he likely didn't have a name beyond that. So hard life, very, very difficult to imagine um, a harder life, right? Um, a brilliant teacher, and maybe it's that hardness in his circumstances that made him so clairvoyant on teaching a philosophy or a way of living that empowers one to retain dignity and tranquility even among life's toughest hardships. So I should say Epictetus never wrote anything down, but happily we have a student's notes on a lot of what Epictetus said, which that's the Socrates-Plato relationship we have with the dialogues. Uh, Epictetus comes to us in the form of discourses, and those discourses were, as I mentioned earlier, further distilled down into a handbook, an at the ready list of the core principles of Epictetus's thinking. Again, this is called the Enchiridion, and I'd encourage you to pick it up and have it desk bound, and you can read the thing in an hour. Um, the thing I love about Stoicism, I guess I fall into the category of a Stoic more than not, although I'm really not one, nor are Stoics typically big on labeling. Um, in fact, Epictetus himself is quoted as having said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." So Stoics generally have a hard time walking around calling themselves Stoics, or at least they should. It's sort of a anathema to the philosophy itself. But the thing is, Stoicism is always at the ready to help us actively. Even the name Stoa, by the way, is it was like kind of a perch work, a stand, the front porch of prominence in a marketplace environment. So they were referred to as Stoics in ancient times because these philosophers were hanging out in public and discoursing amidst the throngs of people. And and very much actively part of life, not sequestered away in a classroom or an amphitheater, noodling on living rather than doing it itself. So this video is in support of Principle 9. The best way I think of 9 is through imagery. That's how I've figured to kind of like keep it in my life and meditate on it. So I've taken this imagery whole hog, full stock, from this wonderful book, which I would really recommend if you're interested in learning about Stoicism. It is called The Little Book of Stoicism. It's written by this guy called Jonas Salzgeber. I hope I pronounced that right. Maybe not. I'm not a German speaker, or I think he's Swiss though. But he's got a wonderful image in here that I'll share with y'all to help you action and empower Principle 9, focusing on what you can control and knowing what it is you can control versus what is outside of your control. Right? It's really the cornerstone of Stoic philosophy. Imagine you're holding in your hands a voodoo doll. This is my voodoo doll. All right. By the way, this voodoo doll of mine is exactly as old as me. What I'm told is it was in my hospital crib with me. So that makes it an old bear. But imagine I took my voodoo doll, which of course is the avatar of me. It feels my pain. It feels my, kind of padding pleasure. It has my emotional life wrapped up in it. We know what a voodoo doll is, right? Imagine I took my voodoo doll, walked over to the window, gave it the old Kobe right outside, and came back, sat at my desk, hoped for a sunny day filled with winds and, good luck and everything working out. And I'm here doing my thing. But all of a sudden, life becomes an emotional roller coaster. And this roller coaster is one with a lot of these flips and stuff and going too fast and making you feel sick. Because outside, so happens in my yard, my voodoo doll has been selected as a toilet, we'll say, for the neighbor's dog. Neighbor's dog gets out the yard, relieves himself on my voodoo doll, right? Neighbor's kid leaves house looking for dog outside yard, finds dog in my yard, right? Also finds me, finds my voodoo doll. Now him being a rambunctious 5-year-old picks me up, starts whacking me against the side of a pine tree. Suddenly I'm in my office here and I've got a splitting headache, right? And I'm feeling totally disabused. And kid gets tired of that little game, so picks me up and drop kicks me into the street. There goes the voodoo doll sitting in the middle of the street. Everybody's favorite vehicle, the Toyota Prius, comes barreling down the street and of course runs me right over. Wow, what a day. All right. Thing is, nobody would do that, right, to their voodoo doll. If you had a voodoo doll, you wouldn't pick it up and throw it out the window and see what happens. No, that thing would be right here, right? All day, every day, keeping it safe, making it feel good, right? But why I love this imagery is it reminds us that the root cause of our emotional suffering, much pain and frustration, is completely to do with us giving it away and having it outside of our control. Isn't that exactly what we do at work often? We pick up our voodoo doll and throw it away. What do I mean? Well, if you're sitting there rooming, am I going to get fired? Is it going to happen? Are they all conspiring against me? Where's your voodoo doll? It's out in the yard, right? Does my boss like me? This emotional kind of frameworking is totally built on things outside of our control, right? Will the client close that deal by the end of this deal? Right? You can't allow your emotional well-being to be focused on things that are beyond your ability to action and control. What we can do and should do is right action in line with virtue, and knowing what it is we can control, and going forth boldly in that direction. You can't control if your boss likes you. What you can control is getting on time to work, working diligently, communicating well, doing the right behaviors that any boss would like, right? You can't control whether or not you're going to get fired. Full stop. That's beyond your control. But again, right virtuous action, giving your all and your best effort, generally lines up well when it comes to the chopping block. In other words, take the doll back into your own hands. Let ourselves decide whether or not to get kicked around emotionally, right? We decide what events mean to us and how we want to react to them. Focus on what it is you can control. That's principle 9. And let the dogs pee wherever they will. All right. Thank you. We'll see you next time.